Every builder I have ever spoken to who quit something that was working quit it during the same phase. Not at the beginning when things were new and uncertain. Not at the end when things had clearly failed. During the middle. The long, undramatic stretch where the work was real, the effort was high, and the results were not yet visible enough to justify the cost of continuing. That phase has a name, and understanding it changed how I think about everything I build. But before we get there, I want to talk about something that makes consistency harder long before you ever reach that phase. Something that most builders never diagnose because it does not announce itself. It just quietly makes the thing you are trying to do consistently slightly more difficult every single time you do it. Consistency is not a willpower problem. It is a design problem. Every time you sit down to do the work, there are invisible micro-decisions happening underneath it. Should I do this now? Is this the right format? Where did I leave off? Each one costs something. That cost accumulates. And at a certain threshold, the cumulative cost of showing up exceeds the motivation driving it. That is not weakness. That is decision debt. A structural condition built into every system that was never deliberately designed to be easy to repeat. I built decision debt into almost everything I did in the early years without knowing it. The content creation process that required me to make 6 small decisions before I could start writing. The client onboarding sequence that had no documented steps, so I reinvented it slightly differently every time. The weekly review that had no fixed structure, so it required effort just to begin. None of these were dramatic failures, but each one added friction to the behavior I was trying to make consistent. And friction compounds the same way everything else does. The fix for decision debt is not discipline, it is documentation and design. Every decision that recurs in a consistent behavior is a candidate for elimination. Make it once. Record it. Remove it from the cost of showing up. The behavior should get easier to do the more times you do it, not harder. If it is getting harder, something in the design is working against you. Consistency does not break all at once. It erodes. Every small inefficiency in how you do something adds a tiny amount of resistance to doing it again. One missed step in the process. One extra decision that should have been automated. One unnecessary friction point that was never removed. None of them matter individually, but they accumulate into what is called system friction. And at a certain point, the accumulated friction quietly exceeds the motivation that was driving the behavior. The consistency does not collapse. It just slowly becomes more effort than it feels worth. I have watched this happen with content creation, with client delivery, with financial tracking, with outreach. The same pattern every time. Strong start. Gradual accumulation of small frictions. Declining consistency. Eventually, abandonment. And the builder concludes they are not disciplined enough when what actually happened is the system was never designed to sustain the behavior over time. Designing for consistency means asking a specific question after every repetition of a behavior. What made that harder than it needed to be? Not what went wrong. What created unnecessary friction? That question surfaces the design problems before they accumulate into the threshold where consistency breaks. Now we get to the phase I mentioned at the beginning. Consistency always collapses at the same point. The exact moment when the behavior has become effortful, but the results are not yet visible. The cost is real. The return is invisible. That gap has a name. It is called the consistency valley, and it is not a sign that the thing is not working. It is a structural feature of every compounding system before it reaches the threshold where momentum takes over. Most builders quit inside it without knowing they were 3 weeks from the other side. I have quit things inside the consistency valley more than once. And every time I did, I eventually watched someone else stay through the same valley and come out the other side with something I had abandoned. The thing was not broken. I just did not understand the phase I was in. Understanding the consistency valley does not make it comfortable. The discomfort is real. The uncertainty is real. What it does is reframe the discomfort as structural rather than personal. You are not failing. You are in the valley. The valley ends. The question is whether you are still building when it does. There is one more thing that makes consistency harder than it should be, and it is the most overlooked of all. The absence of a system that makes the results of consistency visible before they are financially significant. Most builders only measure outcomes: revenue, clients, conversions. But compounding systems produce evidence of their progress long before they produce financially significant outcomes. Content that is slowly indexing, relationships that are slowly deepening, skills that are slowly sharpening, reputation that is slowly accumulating. If the only measurement you have is the financial outcome, you will quit in the consistency valley every time because the financial outcome is the last thing to appear. Building intermediate measurements into your system gives you evidence that the compounding is happening before you can see it in the numbers. That evidence is what carries you through the valley. Consistency feels harder than it should because the systems most builders use were never designed to make it easy. Decision debt accumulates. System friction compounds. The valley arrives without a name. And the only measurement in place is the one that takes the longest to show up. Fix the design. Name the valley. Build the intermediate measurements. And consistency stops being a character trait you either have or do not have. It becomes a structural outcome of a system that was built to sustain it. Next, we are going to look at something that quietly costs you more than almost any other relationship in your business. The client who costs more than they pay. I will see you tomorrow.